what's up, everybody? My name's Jeremy Lesniak. You may know me from Whistlekick or the Martial Arts Radio podcast, but today I'm here to introduce you to Jason's conversation with Colleen Lynch. She is the captain of the Ocean County Special Victims Unit, and on today's episode, she's going to talk about the most common sources of sex crimes and abuse against children. She's going to talk about mitigation and investigating possible problems, as well as what to do if the worst does happen. It's a heavy topic, for sure, but it's an important one, and I'm glad that you're here to watch. When you're done with the episode, make sure you subscribe, hit the thumbs up button. It helps keep the channel going. And when you're all done, maybe you want to come check out what we do at Whistlekick. We've got some cool stuff going on our end. But this is an important episode, and I'm glad you're here for it, so stay tuned.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Safest Family on the Block, where knowledge is power. I'm your host, Jason, and with us today is Captain Colleen Lynch. Hello, Colleen.
Hello. How are you?
Fantastic. How about your own self?
Very, very good. Thank you.
Excellent. Now, Colleen comes to us after a long career with the Ocean County Prosecutor's Office, which began in March of 1998. And over the past 93 years, she's been assigned to various units, including the Megan's Law, Juvenile, Domestic Violence, and Special Victims Unit. The majority of her career has been dedicated to victims of sexual assault and child abuse. As a detective, she was responsible for investigating allegations of sexual assault on both children and adults, and she investigated acts of physical abuse as well as incidents of abusive head trauma. And these cases often evolved into death investigations and led to successful prosecutions of those who abused the most vulnerable members of a community. Since that beginning in October 22nd, 2020, very recently, so congratulations, she was promoted to the rank of captain. And Captain Colleen Lynch continues to supervise the Special Victims, Juvenile, Megan's Law, and Domestic Violence units, as well as the Animal Cruelty and Confiscated Weapons squads. Captain Lynch actively participates in community outreach and education programs like this one, and continues to impart the knowledge she has gained during her law enforcement career to the detectives under her supervision. You are basically a superhero disguised as Colleen Lynch.
Well, that's awfully kind of you. I appreciate that. I just try to do good in the world, but yes, I appreciate that. All of us are that do this work, all of us, not just me.
And you've come on today to talk to us specifically about child lures, which is a term that a lot of parents have heard. And one of the things that struck me when I first talked to you about coming on the show was that what we think about in terms of child lures is not what we should worry about most. And so often when you look up child lures on the internet or talk to an expert, they'll talk about the stranger with the van who asks you to go find his dog. And although those are common lures and are dangerous, they're vanishingly rare compared to people that you know and your child knows who try to victimize children. Am I summarizing that correctly, Colleen?
You are. When you and I first spoke on the phone about setting this up, and you told me that you wanted me to talk about child luring cases, which are extremely significant and are very important to know about, I kind of said to you, like, you and I need to go change the perspective of what the word luring means. You know, the word luring in my world, although it does mean, strangers that sexually abuse children or take children or kidnap children, there are people that lure right under your noses. And I think those are the ones that get forgotten and overlooked on a daily basis, more so than the actual, what you think of as luring and what society as a whole thinks of as luring. Yeah.
So I've heard the term grooming applied to some things that kind of intersect with this. Is there a difference between grooming and luring when we're talking about someone we know?
Well, when you're talking about the law, grooming really is, acts that take place over the course of time, and they are, a gradual breakdown, or actually even it's a breakdown of the child's natural instinct to protect themselves. So that's really like the grooming, being kind to somebody, buying them gifts, showing them affection if they're not getting affection, showing them attention if they're not getting them attention at home. But luring really is an act that takes place, in a very short time frame. It's, hey, come on over here. I have something in my car I want to show you. And then, unfortunately, then a kidnapping or something along those lines, unfortunately, does happen. So there's a little bit of a difference where the grooming is over a time frame or a time span in a child's life where it's the breakdown of that self barrier, and luring is really more of an immediate circumstance.
And so the act of luring is pretty much what we've been thinking about, but the big problem is that we're thinking of a stranger, the candy van person, where actually it most often comes from somebody our children or we know.
I can't even put it into words how the difference of the actual cases, the number of the difference of the actual cases that we deal with when you're dealing with that topic. So in sex crimes in my particular county, every county is different and states are different, but particularly in Ocean County where I work, we handle all sexual abuse cases. So whether you're 2 or 92, if you are the victim of a sexual assault or sexual abuse, the prosecutor's office gets involved. We're very fortunate that our prosecutor, Bradley Billheimer, and our chief, Joseph Mitchell, are extremely supportive and also advocates of children within the community. So they make sure that we have the best of the best in our unit to deal with these kind of cases. You know, when I deal with these cases, especially when you're dealing with children, anything really under the age of 18, the overwhelming majority of those cases involve family members that sexually abuse the child within the family. Do stranger sexual assaults happen? Of course they do. We would be fools to sit here and say that that was not the case, because it is the case. But when you look at my cases, and I'm sure it really is nationwide as a whole, the honest and most significant cases that happen are within the family, and the luring that's taking place in your living room, at your family barbecue, at your special events or things like that holidays, things like that families are coming together. And those are really, the concept of luring has to be changed from just this stranger luring to really what's going on under parents' noses.
Wow. And I can see you mentioned on holidays and gatherings, family reunions, ball games, when everybody gets together. As a parent, those are usually the time that we are the least vigilant, because we're planning the menu and we're chasing around. We probably didn't get much sleep the night before. So these people who are doing this are choosing a time when our children are more vulnerable than usual and less protected than usual, it sounds like.
Right. So when it's very hard for parents, especially, me, I have a 12-year-old son who, I think the sun rises and sets on, as all parents do, to entrust your child with someone like, I want to go sleep over this person's house and I've never met that person, so you're not going there. That's just the way it is. You're going to stay home with family. But unfortunately, when I look at my cases specifically in my unit, and I've been there a significant amount of time, I've been there the majority of my career for over 20 years, specifically in sex crimes. It is this family dynamic, and it's those cases that dominate all of our other cases. It is the uncle that came to visit that you haven't seen in a couple of years, and 2 days later after they leave, unfortunately, the child's coming forward and saying, when I went missing for those few minutes, this is what was going on in the bathroom, or whatever, something along those lines. They are the overwhelming cases that we do have. And I feel like parents, although you do have to teach your children about, being aware of strangers and not going with strangers, and being safe on the internet and not giving your information out, all those other things, we fail to tell our children and fail to ensure in our children that they can trust us with information pertaining to someone that we love and that they love. It's a really hard conversation, but it's a conversation that has to be had with our children, that they, think about this. A child that's coming forward and saying, my father is sexually abusing me, grandpa is sexually abusing me. And it's not just men. It's not just men. It's the majority of what we deal with, but it's not just men. Aunt so-and-so, grandma, whoever the case may be, touched me where they shouldn't have. That is not easy for a child to say in general. Now you put the aspect of love and trust on there and what it's going to do to the family dynamic, and you really have a recipe for disaster of children not coming forward and not disclosing.
I can imagine so. I mean, I've been fortunate to at least not know that I've ever been anywhere near that situation. But if you're raising your kids right, they see how much you love your dad and your brother and your sister and
Right.
your aunt. They see that
Right.
every time you interact with them. And so then that adds
Right.
this other level of reticence to report,
Right.
which I'd never thought of it just that way, but that's,
It's
I don't know
very
how to break
true.
that.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, the only way to do that is by educating your children. You
Mhm.
know, from the very beginning of my child's life, I have taught him, you can tell me anything. It doesn't matter who you're telling me it about. You have to teach them the right parts of their body. They should not be ashamed to call their penis a penis and a vagina a vagina. I'm not saying that you don't teach them to talk about that in private and not, you know, when they're in ShopRite out shopping, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, you're teaching them appropriate, but you should teach them the right part of the body so that there's no miscommunication, that if they are disclosing something to you, that there's not a misunderstanding, that you're understanding them clearly. That's extremely important. And I hate to say it, but it is a factual aspect to my life that the majority of the cases involve family members. So you have to really sit down with your children and specifically say, no matter who it is, no matter who it is in our family, it doesn't mean they don't love you and you don't love them, but you have to be able to tell me. You know, so many times I've had children come to me. My role has changed as I've moved up at the prosecutor's office. Fortunately, have moved up at the prosecutor's office, and I don't do forensic interviews of children anymore. That's now the job of the detectives, right? So now I oversee that and make sure that they have the tools that they need and all the training that they need to be successful in that. But when that was my job, I remember sitting across from so many children who would be disclosing sexual abuse by a grandfather, a father, an uncle, a brother, and they would cry and they would say, but I love them. That love does not go away because they've been sexually abused. You know what I mean? So think about you're putting that burden on a 5-year-old child to tell you that they were sexually abused by someone that they love and that they know that you love. It's a really hard concept, but without education, children, they bottle it up. And that's why you see these delayed disclosures with people, right? You see this 20 years later, I have to come out and finally say that, you know, for 15 years, I was being sexually abused by my stepfather because I didn't want to upset my mother. I didn't want to be homeless. I didn't want to disrupt my family. I didn't want to not see my half sister that my mother had with this person. So I kept it quiet because they just they didn't have the strength at that point to come forward. It's a really sad reality for a lot of people.
You probably won't be surprised how many people I talk to about keeping families safe, where the bottom line is communicate early, communicate often, make sure that your kids know you love the absolute hell out of them, and nothing will ever change that. And it sounds like here again, that's your first line of defense against this kind of thing. Are there some
Education.
ways? Are there some ways that you've discovered in your career that are more effective to communicate this stuff, especially to the littler kids who don't? There's so much that they don't and can't understand even developmentally. What are some scripts or approaches that you've seen work?
So I would definitely say that when you're dealing with children that are much younger, I'm going to go 10 and under, that really needs to come from the parents. I wouldn't go to a school and talk to children anything younger than that age, that, you know, puberty age, 11, 12, you know, only if the parents permit me to, obviously, but like before that, it really has to come from the parents. So we go out and we speak to parents. You know, we work with the health department. We work with various organizations to say, you have to educate your children from the very, very beginning. We have bilingual detectives that also do that as well. Sandra Rodriguez, Melissa Matthews, they go out and they will go to cultural diversity trainings, as well as they will go and speak at like Hispanic Heritage Month and do things like that with the Hispanic population, so that we don't also leave out half of our population of Ocean County, right? We want to be able to also give that education to the Spanish-speaking individuals within our community.
And if I'm sitting down as a parent with that younger child, say a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, what should that conversation be? What are some ways to talk about that with these youngest kids that can get the important points across about what they should watch for and how they can come tell us no matter what?
we have to start by, like I said, teaching children the right parts of the body, right?
Okay.
We need to be able, they have to be comfortable enough to express it to you. So we have to be comfortable enough to hear it, right? So we have to be also comfortable enough to hear it. So I would start by telling them the correct parts of their body and that those parts of the body are only for them. And if anybody ever even makes them feel uncomfortable, even if it's just as insignificant as, a conversation, that's where grooming starts, right? It's how far can I get without them telling anybody that I said this? How far can I get without them actually running to their mother to say, Uncle Tom just said, hey, do you want to see my penis? You know what I mean? I'm sure, it's shocking to hear, but that's how it starts. And it'll be, joked off. I was only kidding. I was only teasing. But your child should be able to say, that's not for me to decipher if it was a joke or if it was funny or if it was inappropriate. That's for the adult in the scenario to do so. So obviously, ensuring your children know the parts of the body, ensuring that they know that they have to and should come to you, regardless of how insignificant they think the scenario is, and for you as the adult to make the determination if this is something that needs to be addressed.
Excellent start. And then from there, how can we help them feel comfortable coming to us? Because as you already mentioned, that can be a very emotionally devastating decision to make, very intimidating. Are there ways to really drive home that message that they're the most important thing, our kids are the most important thing to us, and whatever they bring to us, we will work on together to fix?
Words matter, right? Words matter. Words matter in society. Words matter what you say. When you are in a role of authority, no matter what that role is, your words matter. And when you're a parent and your first reaction is, I can't believe you let this happen. I can't believe this happened. That it is a calm, tell me what happened. Where were you? Don't interrogate them, but it's a very general conversation so that you can get the full picture to see if this is really something that needs to be, taken to the next level. I would definitely say to be as calm as possible. Obviously, you probably want to scream, right? Of course, you want to scream and yell and shout from the rooftops because you're in pain. And I would say as calmly as possible as to not frighten that child, because that child may now be leaving your home to come to a child advocacy center to tell a detective who they've never met before in their lives, like Alex, who wonderfully got you and I together, right? One of my detectives. That it might be their next step or going to the hospital to have an exam done. So your reaction has to be of love and understanding and not interrogation. I can only imagine, I've been doing this for so long, but if my son came to me and told me something, my instinct would be to interrogate him. Where did it happen? What happened? To pell questions at them. Calmly have a conversation with them. Explain this to me. Calmly. Try not to cry, obviously, because when they see you sad, they're going to change their mind. Do you know how many times we've had children? I stopped telling because I made mom cry. It's your natural instinct to do that. But at the end of the day, if you can calmly obtain the information, see if the next steps needs to be taken so that child says, you know what, I did the right thing. My mother loves me and is supportive of me. And I'm going to go to the next step and I'm going to tell that person the truth about what happened. So just remember, it might not end with you. You might be the first line of defense. I always say to anybody, because we also do adult cases in Ocean County, when you are first encountering somebody in the hospital and they're 25 years old and they're telling you that they were just sexually assaulted at a party, you are not there to judge that person. You're there to collect the facts, support them in their decision to move forward, and do an investigation. And as long as you treat that person with respect and empathy and understanding, it will go a very long way.
Today's episode is brought to you by Kurobia Martial Arts Supply. If you're a serious martial artist and you're tired of paying premium prices for high-end Japanese gear, Kurobia has your back. Kurobia was founded by a black belt expat for black belts worldwide. They carry a full range of gis from Hirota, Tokaido, and Tokyo-Do International, as well as bags and books and other training supplies. They made my third Dan black belt back in 2002, the one I still wear to this day, and they've only gotten better since then. Use coupon code SAFEFAM to get 10% off your first order at Corobia.com. They're a good company run by good people that offers good products at good value. Please do check them out. That's Corobia.com, KUROOBIYA.com. Tell them Safest Family on the Block sent you.
Your reaction is going to set whatever the next interaction with that person, whether it be law enforcement, a nurse, a doctor, a therapist, whatever that next step is going to be for that child, that first reaction that you have is really going to set the tone for that.
And you'd use the example of crying, which would make many people want to. And I think the flip side of that coin is also important, where the typical male reaction would be to almost immediately want to storm out and grab whoever they're reporting on by the scruff of the neck and probably end up talking to one of your colleagues over in the violent crime unit.
Right.
But again, these are members of our family. These are people those children love. We can't, it seems like it's equally important for them not to be worrying about how badly you're going to go hurt grandpa if they tell. But again, that calmness you're advocating for seems so important.
Yeah, it is really the only way to ensure that the next step that child is going to face, the next phase in that investigation, is as quality as it possibly can be. If we have children that are coming in going, my dad left the house and he was screaming and yelling, why are they going to continue to tell you what they think they caused, not recognizing that they didn't cause it? You know, we put a lot of burden and a lot of, it's really just a lot of burden on children to hold that in their souls. You know what I mean? It's really not fair to them to have to do that. So whatever we can take on is the best scenario we can possibly give them. You told me, I'm proud of you. I couldn't be prouder than you than telling me. You were so brave to tell me this, and let's see what we can do about that to make sure that never happens again. That's it. Not what you're going to do, what we're going to do. We're doing this. We're a family, and we're going to do this. And you were brave for telling me. That also goes a long way. When you have a child to tell you you did the right thing, you know, it really means a lot to them, because they're now starting a domino effect of not seeing grandpa, and then, you know, other family members are getting involved. Sisters are going to get involved. How could you accuse dad of this? This is nonsense. This, we often will say, if not almost every day, there are no winners in this game. At the end of the day, there are no winners in the game that, you know, that we play here, right? If you look at this in that kind of concept, who's the winner? The child is not the winner. The family is not the winner. The jury that has to make the decision is not the winner. You know what I mean? Us, you know, at the prosecutor's office, sometimes it does not go down the path of criminal prosecution. We just do not have the evidence to go forward on certain cases. Not a lot of these cases get prosecuted. You know, you would think that it's a large number of cases. Unfortunately, it's not. You know, we have to have more than just words to criminally go forward and to criminally prosecute somebody successfully. And when you put that burden on a 5-year-old child to take the stand and say, go prove that this happened, that's what you're essentially saying when it's only their words. So obviously our detectives use every tool possible, polygraphs, consensuals, DNA evidence. We do everything possible on every single case in order to prove that case. No tool is off limits to us.
And that starts with having our children understand that they cannot lose by coming to us personally with anything that confuse them or frighten them, or ranging from a clear case of abuse to, hey, was this abuse, or just something that confused them, to come ask us questions about something.
Right. I tell my son, and this is my personal philosophy, I tell him all the time, I'm on your team. We're a team. I'm on your team. Whether it's me helping you with school, me helping you with life, me making sure that you are as successful as possible, I'm on your team. And if you instill that approach with your children from birth, we are a team. Our goal is the same. Everybody's going to go, and we're going to go to sleep happy at the end of the night, right? But no matter what happens in that day, even if that day is a bumpy road, we're still a team. You're not here alone. We're doing this together. Whether it is coming to the prosecutor's office to make a disclosure, whether it's going to a parent-teacher conference because you didn't do so good on a test. We're a team and we're going to get through this, and even on good days. But at the end of the day, these kind of cases, they destroy families, they destroy families, they destroy marriages. They really honestly do. So if we can make it as easy for these families as possible, which we do at the Ocean County Prosecutor's Office, we have a separate building. These children do not go to a building that looks like a police department. That is not what our building looks like. I don't know if Alex ever got to share that with you. I can definitely share that with you. If you would want to see what an advocacy center looks like, we can do that. It looks like a little house with a living room, and it's very child friendly. We don't wear our weapons in our building. It is no law enforcement. You would never know that it houses 13 people that are law enforcement. You would never know it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to do something about that. Maybe get some pictures in the show notes, because that would be very interesting to see.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, we're actually a nationally recognized advocacy center. This is our second round. So we have to go through it's really very time consuming, and it's really vigorous, and it is all worth it, because at the end of the day, we have to meet certain standards to ensure that we are protecting children, that we are prosecuting cases, and that families are not falling through the cracks, whether or not there is or isn't prosecution. And there are certain standards that we have to meet, and we just actually successfully were reaccredited last year in October.
Wow. So you said something that was interesting to me. You said families aren't falling through the cracks whether or not there's prosecution. So
Right.
in cases where there's not enough to move forward with prosecution, what can you do for the families?
So we have a monthly MDT meeting. It is a meeting where there are people from every discipline, whether it is medical, mental, DCP&P, which is our Child Protective Services in Ocean County or in New Jersey itself, our prosecutors. Christine Lento is our supervising assistant prosecutor. Mara Brader is our senior assistant prosecutor. Our detective staff, we all sit on this monthly meeting and address every single case. And whether it is just getting a family services for assistance with, transportation to and from therapy, whether it is getting a family assistance to be relocated because they live next door to an offender or something along those lines. Every single month, it's the third Wednesday of every month, and it is a lengthy day, and we make sure that we do not let any of the cases fall through the cracks. Every case is discussed thoroughly, and we make sure that even though we're not going down the road of prosecution, what does this family need? Do they need therapy? Do they need help financially? What do they need, and what can we do as a community?
Outstanding. Is that common, or is that something that's highly unusual?
That particular approach?
Yeah.
That particular approach is mandated throughout New Jersey, but I really believe that it is nationwide at this point. And the reason for that is the National Children's Alliance, whom we are accredited through, has spread that philosophy through the entire, it's really spreading internationally, but at this point, almost every single state has an advocacy center, whether it is just a room that is dedicated, in a particular facility to be an advocacy center. They meet the standards of having every discipline be involved in a case, whether or not prosecution is done.
Okay. So I think it's important to underscore that fact that if you're in a situation where you suspect that there's abuse happening, going to law enforcement, even before you know you can prove it because you've watched one too many episodes of SVU, they can still do something for you.
Absolutely.
And that kind of help can be especially important to families where they're living with the abuser, or it's a spouse who's abusing, or there's any other place where the power dynamic is such that you're worried about going to make this thing stop because you're afraid what will happen to you physically, mentally, with having a home. It sounds like at this point, the trend is, and the overwhelming majority of law enforcement in the country can get you help whether or not you can get an actual conviction.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That is great news. That's news to me, and So we heard one good thing today in this interview, at least.
I'm really not bringing the good news.
No, it's I've said before on the show to other law enforcement officers I've interviewed that the reason law enforcement officers are heroic to me isn't the kicking into the doors and the bashing down the bad guys, but the stuff you see so I don't have to. I mean, you see stuff on a daily basis that would make me want to clean out my soul with tequila and a Brillo pad. And so
I'm not afraid of vodka. I can definitely tell you that. Tito's and Club is not so bad. No, all joking aside,
yeah.
it is every person that I work with, not just in my units, but in the entire office. We are dedicated to the community. You have to remember, people do not come to law enforcement because their day has gone well, right? People are coming to law enforcement because it's their worst day. They're coming to you with the most precious thing in their heart, their children, and they're going to tell you that they were just sexually abused by somebody and they were forced to perform oral sex on somebody, right? How are you getting them through that? I don't know how. I don't know if I would have the strength, honestly. When I look at how I love my child, and I've been doing this for so long, and I can definitely put my head on the pillow and say, every person I work with wants to be in this unit. We've done good for the day, and we've helped a lot of people in our field. I'm really proud of what we do as a whole. But these people that are entrusting you with their most precious possession on the planet and saying, help me get us through this, help me have my child trust you enough to make a disclosure of such a horrible nature. Sexual assault is it's a very difficult topic, right? All topics are difficult when you're dealing. When somebody steals your money, it is heartbreaking. When someone, there's a homicide, it is life altering for people. But the victims of sexual abuse, really the survivors of sexual abuse, right? The survivors of sexual abuse, they bear a scar that people cannot see. And it unfortunately is something that they carry with them. And if we don't get to them right in the beginning and get them the help that they need, we are not doing them any service. We are not, and that's not what we're about, So in order to get families to get through it, in order to have children be able to deal with this, we get them counseling, we get them help. St. Francis Counseling Center is the counseling center that we use in Ocean County. They are phenomenal people. They are constantly doing outreach, and they are dedicated to sexual assault survivors and their families as well, which is really, really fortunate that we have a community that embraces these survivors and wants every one of them to have the best life possible after their disclosure.
Wow. And again, thank you so much for the work that you do in that regard. We've talked a lot so far about how to talk to our kids so they know to come to us early if they're confused or if something's happening, and also about how to take that next step and go to the police, to the authorities. Now, ideally, we would catch it before it happens, and that's probably extremely challenging. But talking about lures, is there a typical lure that a family member or close acquaintance might use to separate our kids? Or is there a suite of lures that you've seen that are very common?
Yeah, it's called opportunity. It's called opportunity, right?
Yeah. I'm
not even being cheeky with you. It's called opportunity. People that are under your roof, people that are interacting with you. I've often heard, like, you hunt where you're comfortable. So if it is just I'm alone in the room and you walked out and I'm your stepfather and mom walked out of the room and I'm gonna see if I can feel your breast and you're not gonna tell anybody. It's opportunity is the biggest lure per se, right? The biggest aspect of luring when you're dealing with these families that live under the same roof, that are visiting, that come, had come for a holiday or whatever the case may be. It's opportunity. It's opportunity. And within that opportunity, obviously, it's going to go one way or the other. The child's going to say, oh, are you out of your mind? What are you doing? And immediately tell. Or the child's not going to have that conversation with their parents when they were 3 and 4 and 5 and the reminder and the reminder and the reminder, the annual reminder, right? Change your batteries in your smoke detector and tell your child to come to you, right? If something happens. So really it's the opportunity that I think is the biggest problem when you're dealing with these type of cases where you're dealing with families and interfamily situations.
So the idea of organizing those larger family events in ways that deny opportunity might be a smart countermeasure.
It is, but at the end of the day, it really is communication and education.
Yeah.
How are you not going to have a family barbecue? You know, how you it is, in an ideal world, right? You would have eyes in the back of your head and you would see your child 24 hours a day. That's not realistic. So you have to give your child the tools, right? And you have to give them the confidence and the tools and the knowledge to say, this isn't right. I'm not going in that room with you. I don't feel comfortable. They also need to recognize, to say when they're uncomfortable. And if a child tells you, I'm not comfortable going over grandpa's house, listen to them. If they say, I'm not comfortable sleeping over my friend Susan's house, her dad is weird, listen to them. Listen to them. Listen to your children. Words matter. Words matter when you're projecting it, and words matter when they're being told to you. Words matter.
That brings up another question I had for you, that if a lot of the safety books out there, you get into your Gavin DeBecker, Protecting the Gift of Fear, Left of Bang, they're talking a lot about intuition these days. And that I feel uncomfortable is, of course, your child reporting their intuition.
Right.
Related, that paints a picture that my intuition might ring a bell for me about a family member who comes in, or somebody my kid wants to spend the night with. Have you found that that's common, that you have that reaction of, oh, I always knew there was something a little off about Uncle Frank, or does it mostly come out completely out of the blue?
I'm going to say it's 50-50. Sometimes people don't want to see what's right in front of them, right? Sometimes people really don't want to see what's right in front of them. You know, with the saddest ones that we have that come through our case is when they themselves were sexually abused by that person and then leave their child with that person. And if you think that doesn't happen, it does. I didn't think they would do it again. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It happens more than you can imagine. It really does. Yeah.
Generally, I admire optimism, but that seems a little misplaced.
Yeah, foolishness, right? A lot of people put their head in the sand. They really, really do. But you know, it is. I would say it's really educating your children, and it's educating yourself. Listen to that. Listen to that little voice going, something's not right here. Something's not right. Your child will be just fine not having a sleepover. You know what I mean? They'll survive. I survived sleepover. That didn't exist, you know, until I was probably, you know, much older in high school. Probably that I had a car that I could get home. You know what I mean? I just didn't grow up in that kind of home where my parents would allow that. They kept us very safe and very close to them. Thank goodness. You know, I hated them for it at the time. You know, now I'm like, thank goodness you raised me the way you did, you know. And I would just say, if your child is telling you, I don't feel safe, I don't feel right, something's not right, listen to them and listen to your voice. Your inner voice will tell you so very much about the world as a whole, as well as when your child, you know, when it comes to your child.
So again, we're back to listening and having those conversations, those hard conversations, very early, very often. And like you said, that yearly reminder, you know, I'm actually for the channel putting together a family safety calendar that, you know, reminds you on leap forward day to change your batteries, and to drill with your fire extinguisher just before the 4th of July. And even putting into that calendar, okay, today's 2 weeks before the big Thanksgiving bash, or 2 days before the big Memorial Day picnic, it's time to sit down with the kids and remind them.
If anything happens that you don't like, I'm your source to tell. Absolutely. There's power in giving that to your child, to giving that power over to your child. Like, you can tell me anything, you know, rather than I don't want to hear it. You know, when you're dealing with a sex crime, right, and a sexual assault, what for the most part, these crimes take place in private, right? For the most part, they're taking place between two people in a private area, right? In a closet, in a bedroom, in a bathroom, outside, where nobody else is seeing. It's an intimate crime. You have to remember that it's an intimate crime. It's not, it's not easily detected unless you really have a relationship with your child that is such a safety zone for them that they will run to you and really protect themselves. You have to empower your child to protect themselves as much as it's your responsibility.
I like that note of giving that to the children, giving that, not the responsibility, but the power to make those decisions for themselves, and then come to you with whatever information that they think's necessary.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be 90 minutes.
Yeah,
it's going to be 90 minutes of something about Minecraft, but that other 10 minutes is going to be vital.
I agree.
Could we widen the scope a little bit? We've been talking very specifically about family abusers, which is the overwhelming majority, as infuriating and depressing as that is. But then we go out to that other level, that next level out, with our coaches, our piano teachers, our scout leaders, martial arts instructors, unfortunately, are overly represented, which is a whole thing in the martial arts industry. But are there any major differences for our purposes between those two? Are there different ways that they're approached? Are there different key things to look for, or is it pretty much the same thing, and from our perspective and our duty as a parent?
Well, when you're dealing with somebody who has a supervisory role over that child, right? So you are entrusting your child with them and walking away, right? You don't go to school with your child. You drop them off and go about your day. You don't, for the most part, you're not going to karate with your son or your daughter. You're dropping them off and you're leaving. And then unfortunately, that person takes, again, the opportunity that they have to be alone with that child to take advantage of that scenario. So, as much as I say it over and over and over again, it is educating your children to be aware of a scenario and to recognize when it's not right, and not put blinders on. Putting blinders on is not going to help them. People that, we have a large population within Ocean County that does not talk about sex with their children. They do not acknowledge sexuality until they're on the verge of marriage. And they're doing no service by not having those private conversations with their children about sexuality and their parts of their body and what intimacy is. And I would just say that you have to, from a very young age, instill in children, what is right and what is wrong as far as their bodies and their instinct to protect that body.
That puts me in mind of a story my lovely and talented wife tells from a middle school. Apparently it was segregated by sex gym classes. And early after graduation from high school, several of her classmates were talking about the male gym teacher who had a drill where the kids would lie down on the ground and he would roll over them as a core exercise. And they were all sitting there just, a little bit drunk, probably a little bit high, given what year it was. And I think we were molested. And none of them were
I'm pretty sure you would get fired for that.
Right. And none of them were sure, but it was clear that none of them had that ability to just go ask a parent. Because I think that if that had come forth, they had come and mentioned, hey, this funny thing happened in gym class today. That one parent out of all of them at least would have listened and gone, hey, that's not right.
And so how many does it take? Only takes one. Only takes one person. Takes one person to start a chain effect to say, this is not right and something happened here. I can't tell you how many times it's been, we've arrested many a school teacher. I've arrested priests. I've arrested law enforcement. I've arrested of every occupation you can imagine. Unfortunately, people take advantage of their position, and it's unfortunate. It's not everybody. Oh my God, it's the minority in the universe, but some people take advantage, and usually it's just the opportunity of being alone, staying after school with somebody. You know, that child maybe needs a little more attention as far as home life is concerned. You know, and that's the other thing, you know, it's sad to say, but it's the children that are broken and not getting that love at home and not getting those conversations at home, for the most part, that will fall prey to somebody who shows them love and attention. It is so important to love your children. It's so important. It really is. It's the most important thing you can give them, is teaching them love and kindness and empathy, really.
Well, the bad guys are cowards, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm. This is true.
They have to choose between a child who's confident, who has a loving, close relationship with their parents, who has the vocabulary and the self-assurance to know what's right and what's wrong and to be able to describe it succinctly, and to a child who's clearly neglected, just emotionally, let alone physically, and doesn't have the tools. They're going to pick the easy target, unfortunately.
100%. 100%. You said the perfect self-assurance, right? If you have that in you and you instill that in your child, and that's what they're putting out, that's the energy they're putting out in the universe, they are going to be there's a less opportunity for them to be victimized. It really is. It's the one that needs it and is aching for it and will take it from any direction, right? And it's really, really, it's sad to say that there are children, unfortunately, like that in the universe that don't feel love every day. It should not be that way.
And not for nothing, that same prescription helps with bullying, which is a much lower form of victimization, but still real and important.
Yes. You know, there is a complete lack of empathy that unfortunately is, oh, did I lose you? Oh no, it's just telling me, oh, Colleen, your Amazon package is on its way. Oh, thanks, you know, your other Amazon.
Fantastic.
Maybe it's a book I bought, something really, you know,
Yeah.
educational. But it is the lack of empathy that I think that is just a overwhelming, concept in the world. It really is sad to me that children are not taught empathy, that they are not taught it the way they should be taught it. And, you know, that empathy could roll over to, I think something's going on with my friend. I think something's going on with my friend and I need to tell. I'll give you an example. My best friend, Joanna, since I was 13, we never had a fight, right? Look at that, best friend since I was 13, and I'm only 24, please. Don't laugh, that's not funny. What is it, why are you laughing? But we were best friends for a very long time, right? A very, very long time. And her middle daughter called me and wanted to talk to me about somebody in her life that she thought needed help. And I just thought that was, she reached out for me and says, I think something's going on and I think she needs help. Empower your children. They have to be able to have a voice, not only for themselves, but for others. And that's where that empathy comes in, that I can recognize it in somebody else needs help. It's not just me. You know, children tend to be me. But when you start spreading out in the world, it's not just you, it's other people. And she came to me and Lily, and she needed help for her friend. And I thought that was just brilliant, honestly. Yeah, it was really good.
So raising those confident, empathetic, is that the right word? I think it's empathetic kids with courage.
Yes,
and that's
absolutely.
You would probably be unsurprised how many of our guests, that ends up being the core lesson.
Yeah. What a foundation. What a foundation. Not only for children, for adults. What a foundation.
Yeah.
If you can just take a step back and have kindness for somebody and empathy for somebody and be non-judgmental with, you know, whatever circumstance they're presenting in front of you with, you would get so much further with them, and then you can get them further. Like, why is that a bad thing? You get further with them, and then you get them further along in life. It's the way it should be. It's the way it should be.
And we teach that love and empathy by example, and starting with, again, making sure that they know that they're loved no matter what, and that they can come to us with anything, and the team can solve whatever there is to be solved.
We are a team. Yes. From birth, you should teach your children. We are a team. Yeah.
I mean, there's this few years in the teenage years where they're obviously the enemy, but that's a whole other thing.
I'm on the verge because my
Yeah.
son's going to be 13 and he like really loved me last year. And I'm like, what happened?
Yeah.
Where did I go wrong? No, he's lovely.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Yeah. No,
Well,
I'm
Colleen, I
blessed.
want to thank you so much for coming on today. But before we go, you've been doing this a long time. You've spoken to the press a lot. You've taught people nationwide, I think it is. Is there something you wish more people asked you about?
Is there something I wish more people asked me about? I wish they asked me about getting help for themselves when their child is sexually abused. When their child is sexually abused, I feel like they focus so much on getting that child further along, right, as we talked about, that they lose themselves and they forget that they themselves were also a victim of this crime. And I wish more people came to me and said, I need help. I need help from me. Yeah, I do wish that. So I don't give them a choice. I tell them anyway. Yeah.
You've done what my wife would say is impossible. You rendered me speechless. That had never occurred to me, but is so obviously so very important.
It is.
Wow.
It is. What do they say? Put the mask on before you put the mask on somebody else, right? In the plane.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Yeah. When you're not breathing and you're not functioning, how are you going to get that child healthy? So that is what I wished. Yeah.
Excellent. And it sounds like almost every agency you might report this kind of crime to will have the number of the person the adult needs on speed dial for them to contact and can facilitate you getting that help regardless of your financial situation.
Absolutely. With St. Francis that we work with, it's free of charge. Free of charge. And they have specific for sexual abuse trauma counselors. Yeah.
Well, this is a deeply depressing and dark topic that you've been kind enough to talk to us about, but you brought some points of light to it, both in terms of illuminating some of the things we need and showing us where the resources are. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you. Thank you. Somebody has to do it, right? So we might as well do it well. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you for watching today. I hope you found something useful or maybe even inspiring. If you liked what you saw, please take a few minutes to subscribe, like, and comment. Those little things add up to big help for the channel. If you loved it, consider checking out our Facebook page for more family safety news and information. And think about supporting us on Patreon, where you'll get early access, monthly training resources, blooper footage, and other exclusive benefits. You'll find links to both in the show notes. Most of all, thank you for being part of the safest family on the block team. Stay safe, everybody. See you next time.